In today's video, SCOTUS issues a bombshell ruling pausing the Trump administration from deporting migrants to El Salvador. Also, Democrats are claiming that President Trump is more of a criminal than Mr. Garcia. And Jasmine Crockett almost comes to tears after devastating news.
Breaking news from the Supreme Court. The High Court weighing in on a major aspect of the Trump immigration policy. Overnight, the justices issuing a decision to pause the Trump administration's deportation flights of detained Venezuelans.
This essentially halts the Trump administration's efforts to deport a group of Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador. Of course, this ruling coming after midnight on the East Coast. Definitely a sense of urgency on the part of the Supreme Court. Now, this was in response to a request that was lodged by the ACLU, which had asked several courts, including the Supreme Court, on Friday to weigh in to halt these deportations, saying that they had clients who had been notified that they were expected to be deported. Now, the Trump administration saying that it did not have any plans to deport anyone on Friday, but it said that it could deport individuals as soon as Saturday. Now, this is significant because it's the second time recently that the Supreme Court has weighed in on Trump's immigration powers in this way.
Yeah, so clearly this happened overnight when everybody was asleep. And so people woke up and everybody's reacting. And I think if we want a summary of how people feel on the right as it pertains to this issue, Bill Ackman really hit the nail on the head. He said this: a nation in which one administration can allow millions of unvetted illegal migrants into the country, but requires that a court vet each deportation decision in an individually adjudicated case, will soon lose the values of our democratic system was intended to preserve. And the thinking here is that under Joe Biden, nobody lifted a finger, no judge issued an injunction, and the Supreme Court had nothing to say when he committed, in my opinion, malpractice on the job.
And in the Supreme Court decision overnight, they stated that, quote, the government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Essentially, that applies to individuals who are being held in Texas, who the Trump administration appears to want to deport. The Supreme Court decision, it's notable, two of the court's most conservative members, Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas, dissented in this decision. And so it's definitely a continuing legal battle ahead, Hannah.
Now, the reality here, and I agree with Charlie Kirk, is that this isn't a time for panic, because this is a pause to allow the appeals court to rule on the case, and then the Supreme Court will have their say. Now, the former acting ICE director went on to Fox News to react to this ruling. Here's what he said.
I want to ask you right off the bat about this midnight Supreme Court decision and what this does to the administration's plans to deport these illegal immigrants. This has got to be a blow to the White House, no?
I wouldn't read that much into it. I think what's going on here is basically they're going to put a pause and maybe put some process in place for how to use the Alien Enemies Act. I don't think they're going to declare it improperly used or unconstitutional here. They're just probably going to put some steps in place to say you must do certain things under this to deport people. And they knew if people got deported beforehand, they wouldn't get that process. So my guess is it's going to move along and the administration will still be able to use this. And the good news is it will provide some clarity as to how to use it, when it's appropriate, when it's not. That's my expectation. Obviously, I don't have any inside knowledge, but my expectation is they will be able to continue to use this, and this is just sort of a temporary bump in the road. And remember, these people, if they were going to be deported under that, they're still at least detained in ICE custody now, so keeping the American people safe in the interim.
Now, I learned my lesson from the last bombshell SCOTUS ruling, where if you don't actually read the language, you're going to misinterpret the headlines, right? And the headlines would make people feel on the right that this is a loss. It's not, actually. Let's just read it verbatim here. First, they say that the matter is currently pending before the Fifth Circuit. This is why SCOTUS can't actually give a ruling. All they can really do is say, hey, Trump administration, you need to wait until the Fifth Circuit rules on this case. That's the first thing that stands out. The second thing that stands out, the highlighted part says the government is directed not to remove any member of the punitive class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Meaning what? The people who are part of this case, that's just a group of migrants. not all migrants. All right, so that is the legal update in regards to this case. Now let's move to the political side of this, and it's continuing to be disgusting because MSDNC is claiming that the only criminal when it comes to the photos that have been taken with Senator Van Hollen, the MS-13 gang member, President Trump, and Rachel Morin's mother is the president himself. Listen to this.
Is the White House tweet comparing Trump meeting with mother of the daughter killed by undocumented immigrant versus Van Hollen with the note, "We are not the same." This image in the Oval Office with Patty Morin, who's the mother of Rachel Morin, who was brutally murdered by a fugitive from El Salvador in 2023, versus this image with Van Hollen and Garcia. I would note that, yes, they're not the same because the only person who's convicted of a crime in those two pictures is Donald Trump. So
yeah, the felon was at the White House.
The felon was at the White House, not in El Salvador.
Yeah.
And that is a prime example of why people hate the media. You know, I understand that they don't like President Trump. I get it. You have Trump derangement syndrome. But to basically make people believe, which is their audience, that Mr. Garcia is not a criminal. He crossed the border illegally. Can I remind you? He was caught trafficking humans. Can I remind you? And he was part of a gang confirmed by the country he came from. I mean, what else information do you need? And not to mention he beat up his wife. But hey, he's more of a saint than President Trump, right? That's what they want us to believe. He's not the only one pushing this talking point now. Here, the leader of the Democratic Party, Jasmine Crockett, say the same.
But here's the reality. As far as I'm concerned, he's a lot less criminal than the person that's sitting in the White House. Because last time I checked, he doesn't have any criminal convictions. I don't even think he has any outstanding cases versus the guy that still had cases pending when he was sworn in on January 20th and also has 34 felony convictions. So listen, I don't want to hear anything from the Republican Party about how they're trying to keep us safe when their fearless leader is actually the biggest criminal thus far that we have seen, because I haven't seen anybody with a rap sheet that looks like the president's.
So you can't take what she says seriously, because then you become them, right? That's just playing politics. This is who she is. That's her name. She's supposed to go out there and say things like that because that's the only way she's ever going to get attention. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. And I'm only showing the clip just to prove the point that this is where Democrats are going with this entire story. They're literally trying to compare Mr. Garcia to President Trump.
You know, the Trump administration has a legal point of view. They're going to keep working this, through these different court cases. I think, macro view for me, the American people elected Donald Trump to deport illegal aliens. They especially elected him to deport people who are affiliated with very violent transnational gangs that we now characterize as terrorist organizations. I think he's doing his job, and I think the American people are behind him, and I think the Democrats like Van Hollen look ridiculous standing up for him more than they stand up for the people of the United States of America who are actually citizens of this country.
And by the way, President Trump is keeping Americans safe. Just look at the results on the border. There's no comparison. Look at the amount of criminals that are here illegally committing crimes that have been deported. There's no comparison. And think about the damage that has been done over the last 4 years. It's easy for people like her to forget. But we're not going to let that slide, because here's Stephen Miller taking everybody back down memory lane.
Do you know how many stories I could tell you of children that were trafficked across the border and raped because of the policies of Joe Biden? There aren't enough volumes that could fit into a library to calculate the carnage that has been inflicted by the Democrat Party's policy of open borders. We can spend the rest of our lives trying to document those harms. Where does our whole country go to get repaid for all of the wealth, all of the prosperity and security that has been stolen from us by decades of uncontrolled illegal mass migration? Because we all deserve reparations for what has been stolen from us. It is a tragedy that defies our ability to even describe it.
So there's a question I asked my wife, and I want you guys to answer it in the comments section below, please. So which is worse? Joe Biden opening the border and allowing everybody and their mom to come in. This includes MS-13, TDA, Chinese nationals, and people on the terror watch list. Or President Trump doing a mass deportation where possibly someone who may have a lawful order to be here, maybe they don't have a lawful order, maybe they haven't committed a crime, but they get deported by accident. And I'm talking a small percentage of people. What's worse exactly?
But to me, that is why Kilmar Abrego Garcia's specific case, the case of the gentleman who's a makeup artist out of California who was also sent to that prison, that is why the 75% of the folks who have been sent, the men who have been sent there that don't have criminal records, that is why this is so important. Because if they could do it to them, if they could snatch students off the street without any pushback or recourse, they will do it to any of us. And to be very clear, it's going to be the people of color and vulnerable communities that are next in line.
So if you listen carefully to her statement, she wants the audience to believe that, one, I'm next, people who look like me, I suppose, and two, that these individuals who cross the border illegally, they have not committed a crime. They're not criminals whatsoever. And so if that's the case, then what's the point of the U.S. Constitution? Why don't we just remove the statement out of there then? It's in there. It clearly states that if you cross the border illegally, that is a crime. I mean, I just don't get it. But wait, there's more. Here is Tim Walz's daughter. I guess she's trying to equate Mr. Garcia to Jesus. Listen to this.
If Jesus were alive today and in the United States, this administration would have already taken him and removed him from this country without due process, claimed he was a member of the MS-13 gang as a way to try to justify not giving him due process, as if there is any justifiable reason to not giving somebody due process. How anyone is okay with this is terrifying to me. But yeah, if you look like me, speak up, speak out, because we might be the only ones safe from what's coming and some of the only people that are able to stop it.
So I didn't know that Democrats who are really on the far left and unhinged actually care about Jesus, because last time I checked, they weren't too fond of Christians, right? They believe, Christians are somewhat affiliated with white supremacy and they're actually staying on this country. We see how much Christians are attacked in this country, not just politically, but all over social media. And let's not even remind people of the policies that people like her would definitely support that violate the values and principles that are taught in the Bible by Jesus himself. So no, we're not going to buy that messaging, okay? And it's just like I'm not buying that the Trump administration is going to return Mr. Garcia. And you know who else believes that? The legal analysts at CNN.
One scenario that you don't think happens is they just bring him back. Is that still your opinion?
Yes, I don't think there's any way the administration brings Abrego Garcia back and then he goes back to his home in Maryland and goes about his life. They've made clear that if he does somehow come back here, they will seek to redeport him, perhaps to a third country.
So which of the remaining options does Ellie Honig think is about to play out?
Well, so let's start with the one we're in right now, which I call passive-aggressive defiance by the administration. And this is all about the word facilitation. So the Supreme Court ruled earlier this week that the Trump administration has a duty to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the country, not effectuate. And the difference there, facilitate means essentially you have to help out, you have to try. Effectuate means you have to get it done. The Supreme Court said, well, it's not our business to order the executive branch how to conduct foreign policy, but we need you to facilitate. So right now, there's subjectivity and there's fuzziness over facilitation. Clearly, the Trump administration is defying the spirit of the court's order, but not quite the letter.
Now, let's go to the next story, which is I find to be entertaining. Katie Fang, her show has been canceled by MSDNC. It doesn't matter if you know who she is or not. The bottom line is this. It's what happened when she had to remind Jasmine Crockett that the show was being canceled. They both almost come to tears. Watch.
That was your first time on the Katie Fang show. This is the second to the last episode of the show. Congresswoman, I wanted to thank you for always getting up and early and delivering it. But I also want to say thank you for your continuing support for democracy. It's definitely something that you have made your brand, and it's the integrity that you're bringing. And I'm grateful for you always. We'll miss you. Oh. You can't have me crying at the beginning of a show, Jasmine. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, you haven't seen the last of me. Thank you for being here and getting us started today. I always appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, so there's that. And then there's this story as well. I guess people think it's smart to spend their Easter weekend trying to protest the vice president because there are a group of individuals outside his home doing this. You know, is it me or is it that liberals are the ones who are usually protesting and they are the ones usually repeating things that are not reality? Is it just me or am I the only person that notices that? If we were to go back over the past 20 years, how many protests have been led by liberals versus conservatives? I'm just curious. I'd really love to know. Now, in this next clip, which is also, I think, irony, by the way, Andrew Cuomo, who's running to be the mayor of New York City, has come out against AOC. In fact, he blasted her. He doesn't believe she's the answer, and he did not shy away from saying that.
The Democrats have to learn the lesson first. Yes, focus on Trump, but learn your own lesson. You can't have this extreme wing of the Democratic Party running the Democratic Party because it doesn't work.
So AOC was opposed to it. Is AOC part of the extreme wing?
Yes. Yes.
Wow, that was a really good question and a very direct answer.
That was direct, right? Yes.
Yes. One word, yes.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes the answer is yes.
So what do you...
Yeah, so he's actually telling the truth out loud, and I wish more Democrats would do something like that. Now, maybe this has to do with the fact that he's running as mayor and, you know, he needs to take a stand. But it's good to hear things like that from people on the other side. Now, let's actually go to the question of this video because I really want to know what you guys think about everything we covered, but more importantly, the ruling from the Supreme Court, plus the reaction from Democrats as far as Tim Walz's daughter, I guess, equating Mr. Garcia to Jesus, and then MSDNC, I guess, claiming that Mr. Garcia is more innocent than President Trump. I want to know what you guys think about all this in the comment section below. Now, last night, a federal appeals court smacked down Judge Boasberg's order to hold the Trump administration in contempt. This is a huge legal blow for Democrats. And if you missed out on that story and more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.